Good morning. This is Mr. West, and I'm trying something new. It seems like a lot of you are having some difficulties doing the lessons, and there really isn't a way for me to do a Google Meet because everybody is on different lessons and different quizzes and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do it this way and see if this helps. First of all, before we even get into the lesson, what I want you to see is as I scroll through here, there's a key part right here, vocabulary. You will see questions that pop up that use this vocabulary. It is important to know the vocabulary. But as I scroll down, you will see that immediately I go into the questions. These are open book. I should not have anybody getting poor grades on here because your answers are right up there. All you have to do is scroll back and find your answers. So I'm going to try a bunch of small lessons on these and see if they help. All right, so for today, we are going to be working on spore bearing plants and the life stages. All right, so just because I'm going over these does not mean you don't need to reread them or take notes on them, but we're going to do this together. All right, so first of all, spore bearing plants and the life stages. So spore bearing plants are different. They do not make seeds like the other plants. Some plants do not grow flowers or cones where seeds can be produced. Yet these plants are able to reproduce. These plants reproduce themselves by the means of spores. Often, these plants do not have male or female parts. Many of these plants are as familiar to you as flowering plants. If you have walked in the woods, you probably observed mosses and ferns. These plants produce spores during the reproduction part of their life cycle. So even if you have not seen them near your house or anything, because Florida is a little bit different, you will see those on TV and everything else, especially if you go to other places and visit, different parts of the country when you visit relatives. So let's look at the vocabulary. Exposed. When something is exposed, it is uncovered or opened up. Think about a present. All right, when you unwrap the present and open it up, you've exposed the present from it being covered. Or let's say you're playing hide and seek with a friend and they're hiding under a blanket. All right, when you pull the blanket off of them, you're exposing them. So now you can see them. All right, let's look at the other word. Parasite. It's an organism which must obtain its food from other organisms. So parasites obtain their food from other organisms. They live on them and feed off them. All right, so life stages. Just as flowering plants go through special life stages, so do spore-bearing plants. The life stages of beginning, growth, and adulthood are similar. The events of each stage are somewhat different. So while spore-bearing plants are similar to seed-bearing plants, please remember they do not match evenly. There are differences. So the beginning stage, life for these plants begins as a spore. A spore is a single reproductive cell which does not require fertilization. All right, so it does not require fertilization like the seed-bearing plants. So you don't have to have a male and female part, and it does not require animals and insects and stuff to help spread the pollen or the cones or the different seeds. Okay, so a spore is a single reproductive cell which does not require fertilization. New offspring can grow directly from the spore when the conditions are present, right conditions are present. The parent releases the spore into the air. It can begin growing as soon as it settles on something moist. Warmth also helps spores begin to grow. So what I want you to think about is what happens to the spore if it is not meeting those requirements? What happens if it does not settle on something moist or warm? Does it die? No, it does not immediately die. So spores can live for a very long time. And I shouldn't say live, but they are able to work for a very long time. A spore is not technically alive, but well, yeah, I guess it's hard to describe, but you can't think of a spore as alive as like the other things. Um, so most spores are able to remain alive in different difficult situations. Heat, cold, or dryness will not kill many spores unless they are exposed to the conditions for long periods of time. So basically, when a spore has been sent out, it's not requiring food and light and water. And so that's what I mean by, in a way, it's not like it's alive. Okay, a spore can live a long time before actually growing into a plant, kind of similar to a seed. All right, so they can remain alive with heat, cold, or dryness for quite a long time unless they are exposed for long periods of time. Okay, some spores are protected by tough coats. Others may have hair like covers so that they can become attached to other organisms. So they spread out in the wind, just like a lot of the seed bearing plants. When you think about the pollen and things like that, the wind will take the spores and spread them around, and some of them the animals will take them around. Okay, many spores are light and feathery. All right, so they're very light. The wind can keep them going. They may stay in the air for long periods of time, so they can go a long ways, travel a long ways. That helps spread them out. The growth. All right, the growth stage. Growth happens by mitosis. Okay, moisture will help the cells divide. However, spores must be attached to something that will give them food. When conditions are right, mitosis will begin. The spore grows into an adult organism. Right? This stage is divided into two quite different parts in some spore producing plants. Other plants in this group will grow into adult plants without a second growth step. So some will have a little bit different life cycle. Growth happens very quickly for some plants, and adulthood can be reached in less than a day. Think about that, being an adult in less than a day. Ferns and mosses may take several years before they arrive at adulthood. So ferns and mosses take a lot longer, while others might reach adulthood in, less than a day. All right, so the adult stage, the spore plant becomes an adult when it is ready to reproduce. The adult plant grows spores. When the spores are fully developed, they are released into the air. Some spore-bearing plants live for many years. Others may complete a life cycle within months. Most adult plants in this group can reproduce more than once in a lifetime. So basically, some of them live many years, and others will go through their entire life cycle and die within a few months. So it all depends on the type of plant. But most of them can reproduce more than just one time in a lifetime. When old age comes to these plants, they stop reproducing. The plants do not function well enough to accomplish reproduction. The plant eventually dries up and dies. Yet millions of spores from the parent plant remain after it dies. These spores could easily replace the parent. So even after the parent dies, the spores still live on and can create a lot more of the plants, even though the original one has died. Okay, so let's look at our questions. All right, an organism which must obtain its food from other organisms is called what? Now, this is where I want you to do your question mark and your X's, and you're going to do it in your head, okay? You can still do that just because we don't have a pencil and paper here. So let's look. An organism which must obtain its food from other organisms is called, we have a parasite, a spore, a fern, and a moss. So a parasite, okay? I'm going to say question mark, okay? Because that's possible. So parasite is a question mark. Spore Is that an organism which must obtain its food from another organism? No, we know that spore is like a seed, and that's how plants reproduce. So I'm going to put an X by spore. Fern. Okay, I know that fern is a plant, and I know that it gets its food the same way other plants do. And so I'm going to put an X by fern. Say no to the fern. Then we're going to go to moss. And I know moss is like a plant as well. And so I'm going to put an X there. Now, I'm thinking it's parasite. However, I'm not going to answer this just yet because this is open book. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to look for parasite and see if I'm right. So now here parasite is a vocabulary word, so it was easy to find. But otherwise, I would have started scanning through here and looking at these before answering the question. And that's what you really need to do. This is open book. You guys have been asking for open book stuff since the beginning of the year. Mr. West, can we use our notes? Is this open book? Well, now you get it. Okay, so make sure you go through, and here we see parasite, an organism which must obtain its food from other organisms. So we know that that is the correct answer, and we can go ahead and put that in there. Now, I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm not going to do these other questions and answer them for you because you need to, but I will talk you through the questions. All right, and remember, the best way to do this is to use your question mark and your X's. What is a spore? Is it a single cell capable of reproduction? Is it a fertilized single cell? Is it a pollen grain or is it an embryo? Okay. Remember, this is open book, so go back in here and look and find where it says spores. Scan through here, look for the word spore, and see if you can find the answer. All right. Number 3, where do spores come from? Are they come from chemicals? Do they come from the ground, from a plant, or the air? Okay. Make sure you're using your question marks and your X's. Okay. How do spores help the survival of spore-bearing plants? Okay. Spores attract animals to help with pollination. Is that how they do it? Spores can last for many years without beginning to grow. Spores can help plants with photosynthesis. Or spores provide food for the plants in a harsh environment. Which one of these makes the most sense to answer? How do spores help the survival? What does the spore do? First of all, you need to think about what is the spore's main function. Okay, and then how does it help the survival or help the plant to continue on? All right, how can spores live in harsh environments? Okay, some are hidden inside the plant for protection. That yes, put a question mark. No, put an X. Spores contain a special protective covering. Okay, question mark for yes, X for no. Spores are only found underwater for protection. Question mark for yes, X for no. Spores bury itself in the ground for protection. Okay, question mark for yes, X for no, and then go back. How many have question marks? If it's only one, you found your answer. If it's more than one, you have to go ahead and think about it. But before you check, let's look. Spores live in harsh environments. We've already read the question. We see our answers. So scroll back up. Look for spores. Go through here and see what it says with harsh environments. And that's what I would scan for. Scan for the word harsh and environments. And you should be able to find your answer. Remember, you always need to find something to scan for in your question. Let's look at number 6. Explain how spores travel from one location to another. So how do the spores get around? You know, do they have legs? Do they walk? Obviously not. So which one of these ways is the correct answer? Spores travel through moving water. So is it water that causes them to travel around? All right. Insects and bees carry spores. So are they like the pollen? Animals carry spores from one spot to another, okay? And spores can be carried by the wind, all right? So what you're looking for, you may have two answers here that look very similar and possible, but what you're looking for is the most likely, all right? So go through there, and which is the way most likely that these are carried, right? There's really only one solid answer. So use your question marks and your X's, and then go back up and go through here and look and see how they travel the majority of the time. Now notice it does not say every time, but the majority of the time. How do they get around? Number 7, the time span between growth and adulthood of spores. All right. Is it several years? Does it take a long time to go from the spore into adulthood? It varies greatly. So does that mean that it changes depending on the plant? Or is it very short, like it doesn't take any time at all? Go back through your questions. Well, make your question mark and your X's, and then go back and look for growth and adulthood. So scan for those and see what you find. Number 8, when are spores ready for reproduction? Okay, so when are they ready for reproduction? Are they ready when they arrive in the egg of the same plant? Are they ready when they are released into the air? Are they ready when they are carried into the air to female parts? Or are they ready when they are transported by insects, bees, or birds? So when are they ready to go ahead and turn into plants and start the life cycle? That is what it means by ready for reproduction. Which one of these points are they ready to turn into a... All right, and for the last one, how do spores grow into an adult plant? The cells in the spores start to differentiate into different cells once it's planted in the ground. Is that how they turn into an adult plant? The cells in the spores grow into different cells through photosynthesis. Is that how they grow into an adult plant? Cells in the spores start to grow through the process of cellular reproduction. Is that how they go and turn into an adult plant? Or cells in the spores go through a process of mitosis. Is that how they do it? So in this one, you can go ahead and you can scan through and look for adult plant, or you can start looking through these different things. Okay, here it says spores start to differentiate. So you can scan for differentiate. Do you see that in there? Photosynthesis. Can you find photosynthesis? Cellular reproduction. Can you find that? Or mitosis? Which one of those words can you find in there and scan and find help you the most? So make sure that you guys are taking your time. Make sure you are scrolling through the lesson and verifying your answers. All right. You should already have an idea before you scroll, because you should be using your question marks and your X's. But make sure you go back, because on these you have the ability to go in and answer the questions. All right. So let's see if this helps you guys some. Again, I really can't do Google Meets for lessons because everybody is at different places at different times, but I think I'm going to make a bunch of these little mini lessons and post them up for you guys to look at and everything else. And hopefully these will help you with your lessons, and we will go for there. I will also try to do something like this with the quizzes as well. I cannot give you answers because you will be graded on these, but let's see if this helps. Please, please, please let me know. You can have your parents contact me on Remind, or you can post in Google Classroom how you like this, but please let me know if this helps. Thank you, and enjoy your lesson.